Welcome to Sports Profiles. I'm your host, J.R. Ibarra, and for the next half hour, we'll give you a behind-the-scenes look at some of the sports personalities that you've only been able to see from the grandstands. Professional drag racing has qualities unlike any other sport. It's the combination of man and machine trying to push themselves to the limit. But professional drag racing also has some other distinct qualities. It allows for family involvement, whereas other forms of competition, the families can only stay up into the grandstands and not get into the game. And for the Brad Anderson family of Laverne, drag racing is truly a family affair.
As most young guys, you took the car, you drove on the street, and you went to the racetrack on Saturday or Sunday, and this was way back in the late 60s when I started, early 60s, excuse me. Early 60s, 61, 60, right through there. And in 62, I got what they called a super stocker. It was a factory hot rod from Dodge, and started racing that, and it was too much of a hot rod to drive on the street, so pretty soon we started driving an old beat-up 54 Ford, and that's what we drove on the street. Well, we had this new car that we couldn't afford that sat there, we raced on weekends.
What were you doing at that time when you first started racing? Were you in school or?
No, I was married, had a little girl, my oldest daughter, and worked for Coors Brewery in Denver, in Golden, Colorado, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm. Was there any other interests in your life growing up as a kid that maybe you thought you would like going into besides racing?
No, never. From the time I was 10 years old, I had to get the Hot Rod or Carcraft magazine on the stand. When I could get a quarter off somebody, that's what they cost then. And cars were always my interest because I wasn't a football fanatic, and even though I loved to watch it, but I just wasn't any good at playing it. So cars and drag racing was the one thing that you can race on whatever level you want. You don't have, if you wanted to, for instance, if you were into automobiles and you were interested in Formula One, it's totally out of anybody's question to ever do it. But drag racing, you can do it on whatever level you want. If it's the street car, you drive on the street. So it was the one thing that was attainable.
Getting to the driving, the competition aspect, how long have you been in full-time competition?
Well, I've had an alcohol funny car, as we said, since 1974, and we've raced real extensively since 1984. 10 years later, I won the World Championship in 84 and 85 and 89, and ever since 84 we've raced a lot. And then in 87 we was fortunate enough to pick up the Jolly Rancher sponsorship, which helped us out a lot, so we were able to do it a little bit more professional, shall we say. And this year we're going to expand on that. We now run 2 cars. As I told you, I'm quitting driving and passing it on to my 2 youngest kids. My daughter's been driving this past year, and now my son just got his license this past weekend. So he'll take over the funny car, and I'll stand back and watch, and hopefully foot the bills.
Now, getting to the mechanical maintenance of the car, what kind of mechanical things do you do at the track during an event?
Well, we'll make it run, and after the run, actually the oil's changed, the bearings are checked on the bottom. We just about always pull the pan and check the bearings, and that pretty well tells you the tune-up on the engine. We check the valve springs and set the valves and pack the chute and adjust the clutch, and this is an ever-run deal. It can go down to where you burn the piston, you got to pull it apart and change a piston, or even change an engine, but those are rare. But we do routinely check the bearings and the clutch adjustment. That's all mandatory. And after all, you got an hour.
What has been your quickest time and speed?
I've run 594 and we've run 236 and a half.
And getting to the actual cost of a car, let's say somebody wanted to purchase a car similar to yours, what would it cost somebody?
About $80,000 for a new one like this, meaning the funny car. The dragster would be slightly less, $75,000.
And the cost per season, what kind of thing would that tell you for you?
Depends on how many runs you run, but you could base it on about $850 a run to run the car. So it's It's 850 times how many times you want to run a year.
Is there any kind of fear or trepidation as you step into a car before a run?
No, but as I've told my kids too, I'm never scared of it, but you better respect it because they have so much power that they can get you in trouble in a real hurry. So you've got to always respect it and know that, and remember that it can't hurt you. Because as I said before, it'll run 0 to 100 in just over a second. So things happen real fast here. And you've got to be able to, you have to have enough experience in the car to be able to do it all by reaction. You don't have time to say, yes, it's time to shift it. It's already too late if you've got to think about it.
Now that you have a son and a daughter planning to get into actual competition, what kind of, do you have any kind of fears or reservations in seeing that happen, or is that something you fully support?
If you're really around this racing and you look at the way we do things, and you got to remember too that these are probably two of the best equipped and best maintained cars in drag racing, and they have the best equipment. NHRA safety rules are such that it's real hard to get hurt very bad. There are the freak deals, but you know, after all, you can get hurt driving home from work tonight too. So I think you're less apt to get hurt drag racing than you are on the street.
Let's talk about your family involvement in your racing endeavors. Why don't you give a detail of who is involved and what they do and when did it all come about?
Well, as I said, my kids have been with me since I started. I'm Randy. For years, my wife worked, and she wasn't able to attend the races when we raced. I had a job, and I'd leave on Friday night, and we'd go race, say, in Portland, Oregon on a Saturday and be back here on Sunday so we could be to work on Monday, because I never missed work. And so my son, even when he was 7 and 8, 9 years old, used to go with me. So he's been with me since I started, other than a couple of years when he worked on other guys' car for a living to make extra money. And Shelly, when Randy went off to help some other guys, Shelly started helping me doing between round work. I would have to say that those two of them could probably change an engine faster than just about any of my competitors' professional crews. But anyway, she can do all of it too. As this dragster behind, as the people this year have seen, she can set the valves, change the valve springs, work in a clutch. I figure if she's going to drive it, she's going to work on it. So that's pretty much the attitude we take. And they can do any of the routine maintenance between rounds and stuff. And Randy personally builds the cars, does most of the maintenance on them. And now he's going to start driving it.
And your oldest daughter runs the business?
She runs the business here. She's never been actively worked on the car. She's always been in the background working here into business. So the customers that use our products don't want to talk to me on the phone. They talk to her because that's the one they get the service from.
How's your wife thought of your racing career?
Well, she's enjoyed it. As a matter of fact, I think that she had some reservations about my stopping driving. I determined a year ago that I was ready to quit, and I wanted to pass on one of my kids. I would not consider hiring a driver to drive one of these things. So I think she's resolved herself to the fact now that I don't want to drive anymore. If something happens, I'm not scared to get back in the seat, but I don't plan to.
What kind of things has your dad taught you being a part of this racing business?
I guess I've just learned to be competitive. He's a very competitive person, and I kind of picked that up, you know. So, anything but winning's losing, and that's all that matters, winning.
How would you characterize your dad? What kind of a person is he to work with and work for?
Intense, very intense, very demanding. You know, he expects only the best and 100% effort, and if you don't give that, he'll let you know. You know.
How would you characterize the type of person your father is?
Intelligent, very smart, very poor communicator. But I think it's because he's so far ahead of if I'm learning something, he's already had me learned it up in his mind. And he's on to the next problem, and I'm still over here, and he doesn't want any questions about it. So, yeah, he's intense.
How is he to work with? You're in a unique situation where he's your dad, and he's also overseeing the racing operation. How is that relationship?
It's got its good days and its bad days. I think it's the best of both, and it's, the worst and the best. So it takes a lot of getting used to, especially from people viewing it from the outside. They really don't understand it. It's like, yeah.
How do you like working for your dad?
Well, like any situation, we're both pretty strong people, so we see pretty much everything eye to eye, and he's definitely even a bigger workaholic than I am, so that's not too bad either. It's been a real good experience for me. It really has.
So you run the entire business while he's out on the road racing during the entire year.
Day-to-day operations, yes. He makes the decisions which areas we're going into, what the research and development, and that type of thing. But after the ball's rolling, yeah, we have to keep it going while he's gone.
How would you characterize your husband? What kind of person is he?
I guess he's very intense. He takes it very serious. I don't think he knows how to relax, unfortunately. He's just got a lot of energy and keeps busy.
For Brad Anderson, victories on the racetrack have translated into a successful business. He's recognized as one of the leading manufacturers of racing components in the nation. Brad gives a detailed look into his unique enterprise. What year did you make that move to get into manufacturing of racing components?
I started dabbling with it a little in '84, and then I leased this building here in Laverne in '85, and I've been here ever since. I build a billet aftermarket cylinder head for the race cars, primarily used in drag racing, but they are used in some of the boats, tractor pullers, some mud bog vehicles, but primarily drag racing.
And you also mentioned that you did full complete engines as well.
Oh yes, we manufacture and ship complete engines all over the world. We've shipped them to Sweden, to Australia, England, but primarily we build the cylinder heads and all the components, rocker arm assemblies, valve covers, manifolds, and this. And not only to alcohol, but we also sell a lot of them to the top runners in the fuel classes.
How many engines will you produce per year?
Oh, 15 to 20, depending on the year. But we sell a lot of parts. In other words, a lot of them will go out of here as a kit. It's all the pieces to put it together, which is the way I'd really prefer to do it. It gets too labor intense to put the whole engine together, and let the customer learn by putting it together. Most of them are pretty capable. Right here you see some 5-inch thick material, and it's written on there fat, which is an in-house joke for one of the cylinder heads that we manufacture. And that's what it starts out like as. I buy 5-inch material and I make it into, well, this one right here is an example. This has had 2 operations. If you look at it as this one is from the top, you just see some holes. And if you see it from this side, it's fully machined. So right now they're setting my one machine up over here right now, and we will put it on the machine in the combustion chamber against the 4th axis in this mode, and put 2 of them opposing on the 4 axis. Tomorrow morning we'll have a cylinder head.
So this type of aluminum that you're starting off with is a high-grade type of aluminum?
It's aircraft grade. I get a spec with it, but it's 6061 T6. As I said, this stuff it has to be repairable, because in racing things get hurt. And we want to make it so that we can weld it up and put it back on the machine and remachine it if they throw the rods out of it and blow a chamber up pretty good or something of that nature. Right now this particular machining is facing the intake and exhaust sides of a pair of cylinder heads right now. They went on about 2 hours ago, and this operation will be done by tomorrow afternoon. There's about 500 pages of computer memory in that operation to get it done. And once they're done there, we bring them into here where we put the seats in the heads and put the guide liners in, do the guides, the seats, and finish the valve job in this department. And back in this room here is where the guy does the finished porting. He's working on one right now. And when they come out of the porting room, they got to go to the flow bench, and there's a cylinder head flow bench back in another little room back in there where we flow every head to make sure that it flows the CFM of air that I want them to flow. This is a cylinder head flow bench. You bolt the head on here, and you flow the cylinder head with different valve openings to measure the CFM of air that it flows. And as you said, we do samples. There's all these little blocks here are sample ports and sample heads, and I make single chambers, because we're just duplicating it on a motor 8 times. Hopefully we get everything the same. So, and all these are sample valves of different shapes, and it's a every day we work on a sample cylinder to try to make something better. There's no such thing as too good a cylinder head. Because that's like saying you got too much power. There's no such thing. This is a cylinder head that's had the valve work done and a finished porting, and it just needs to have the push rod holes put in it, which vary with block and applications. This is an alcohol cylinder head, which is what we consider, they call the fat head, which is the ports are so much different. This is my so-called nitro head, but you can see there is quite a difference. They both fit on the same block, but you can see the immense difference in the combustion chambers and stuff. See, there's really no similarity. This is what the fuel cars run, and this is what the alcohol cars run. Evolution has brought this about, and I think that probably within a year we'll be running some of these on nitro cars. Because it is a more efficient cylinder head and a more efficient design, but the nitro car is so incredibly hard on things that you have to be sure you have everything engineered right. And this particular cylinder head uses a billet aluminum rocker that we make, and I don't think that would be strong enough for the fuel car. They can break billet steel rocker arms, because when you got 500 horsepower per cylinder, you can imagine the forces that exhaust rocker sees when it opens against that kind of pressure.
So to go from that bare bar stock aluminum to this, how many hours would it take to accomplish that?
It's about 44 hours of machining and
Per head.
and hand labor. The actual machining itself is like 30, on this particular head is like 36 hours of machining. So there's a lot of time. And that machine there ran all last night. I stayed here till 10 o'clock last night, and I came in this morning, it was just powering down as I walked in, shutting off.
What kind of cost per head for a set of heads, complete heads?
About $4,200 is what is bare, as you see this in here. And then when you get valves and stuff, you get upwards of over $5,000 assembled, repair.
Yeah. Is there a certain length of time or a longevity period for the heads?
Oh, I've got fuel guys, for instance, Eddie Hill, with the Super Shops car. I've just recently had a set of heads that he considers his favorites, and he's ran them since 1988. So maybe I made those too good.
Is there a lot of demand for this type of equipment?
Well, it's a very limited market, and there's not too many people in it, but I was the first one to get into building billet heads for the overall market. Ken Vinny had made some on a limited schedule before that, but now there's 4 people building the billet heads like I do, and I would say there's probably 400 pair a year built. That's it. It's not a big market in terms of mass production or something, but
yeah.
When you consider drag racing's not a big endeavor, that's quite a few heads. And also there's mud boggers using them, there's drag boats. We've got some drag boat guys that have our cylinder heads. There's tractor pull guys that use them. But the primary market is drag racing. Because the other guys, the drag boats use new stuff, but the tractor pullers use, generally speaking, buy used drag racer stuff. I guess if you got 5-engine tractor, you couldn't afford all new stuff. But also the majority of my customers now are so-called semi or professionals. I mean, the John Forces and the Don Garlitzes or the Shirley Muldownys or the Don Perdomes and stuff, they continue to race as long as they have a sponsor. I mean, when they don't have a sponsor, they park it in a hurry, because the fuel car, you have to have, if you've got everything, you still have to have $500,000 a year in sponsorship money to be able to do it. But if you don't have anything, you're starting from scratch, you're looking at probably $1.25 million to do it, because you'd have to have the $600,000 to $700,000 worth of parts, and tractor trailer and race cars and parts to start.
Right.
So it's really hard anymore. That's why you don't see any young people coming into it. Who's got that kind of money? And if you did have, would you want to take a chance on losing it?
Yeah, you know. So.
Well, drag racing looks real simple from watching it from the stands or on television, but there's a lot of mental preparedness because there's a lot of pressure. If you run a Winston Cup car, as for instance, and we've all watched it on television, NASCAR, there's a yellow flag and you could lose a lap. Well, you could pick the lap up on a caution and still win. Drag racing, if you have a valve cover loose, go home, you're done. And it's real discouraging to be in Gainesville, Florida and have that happen. So drag racing really makes you become a perfectionist. If you're ever going to win a race, you can't make a mistake. So you really have to worry about those things. And if you're the owner and the driver and you're crew chief and everything else, you got a lot of things on your mind because when you're getting in the car, you're thinking, is that parachute just right? And all these sort of things. So it wasn't until I was able to financially not have to worry so much about whether the motor I might break it. For years, I couldn't win a race because I was worried if I broke it. We knew we couldn't race for a long time. And if you have to have if you got those pressures and you let them enter into it, you can't do anything good at all. But drag racing, you got to also remember, is a real reaction game. And you got to be quick. If you can't have 450 lights on a 4/10 tree, you're late. And I've done pretty good, all in all, for my age.
What about the physical strain that takes place being inside the car, going from 0 to 230 miles an hour in about 6 seconds?
I don't think there's much physical strain, but it's amazing when you get out the other end how you're panting. You'd think you'd just run 100 yards.
What would you consider to be maybe the most treasured win of your career?
Golly, I never thought about it. I've been fortunate enough to win quite a few events, and I've never really placed any one of them ahead of the other. I've always told my kids at the other end that this could be the last one, so enjoy it, because there's always a last one. But I would probably have to place the Winter Nationals in '81 as one of my favorites, because that was the first one I ever won. And then I was fortunate enough to win the U.S. Nationals 3 years in a row, and that's kind of the Indy 500 of drag racing. So to do good there is a real good feeling.
How many national events have you won in your career?
25.
And that's been in NHRA primarily?
Yeah, it's only in NHRA. That's the only ones I count as national event wins. And I won the World Championship 3 times, and I won this division. NHRA is divided up into 7 divisions, and I have been fortunate enough to win this division 8 out of 9 years in a row.
Talking about the traveling, you mentioned that you were gone several days out of the year. Why don't you explain that?
Well, because of the expense involved and stuff, and because my daughter runs my business here, I'm able to be away from it. And I get in the 18-wheeler and we go. This year we were gone one stretch this summer, we were gone for 21 days, and we were home for 3, and we was gone for 20. So you don't have much of a home life or a social life when the racing season's on, but we enjoy it, and it involves all of my family, so that makes it worthwhile.
I don't know what a normal family does on the weekend. We are always racing. I look forward to a weekend at home, where I think most people look forward to having something to do instead of mowing the lawn. We're just not, it's normal to us, but I don't think it's normal to everybody else.
Is being involved in racing something that you have wanted to do? Is that what your goals were as a young girl?
Yeah, I grew up with it, with Dad and Mom and the whole family. We all went to all the races, and I always looked forward. I never thought I'd have my own race car, to be honest with you. I thought best I could do was to work on my father's car. So this is better than what I ever thought.
It's nice to have family. I don't think you can find anybody who cares as much as family. So you know there's 100% effort there. But again, family is family, and it sometimes makes it even harder, you know. But the good times, you know, outweigh the bad times, that's for sure.
What is it that you love the most about being involved in racing?
I like the people a lot. You know, people in drag racing has made it very, very pleasant. But I guess the most part is the competition.
Is getting into the driver's seat, is that something your dad encouraged you to do, or is that something that maybe he kind of was a little neutral on for you to do?
Well, I shouldn't say encouraged me. I think he just wanted to know that I wanted to do it. And when he'd found out that I was interested in driving, and in fact was going to drive for a competitive car about a year ago, one of his older cars, and he then realized that, yeah, I wanted to drive. That's when it all came about. So I wouldn't say he pushed me or encouraged me, but you know, if I wanted to do it, he was going to give me the opportunity.
Your dad has been very successful as a driver in winning Winston World titles and various national events. Do you have a sense of having to try to match that same type of success?
I'm starting to feel that way. You know, 6 months ago when I planned on driving, I told everybody, oh, I'm just going to go at my own pace and I don't feel the pressure, and that I was going to be my own self, you know, just do what I can do. But now that it's getting closer to time and all, I'm starting to feel it. You know, people are going to expect me to go out and win. You know, it's one of the best cars out there, and it's going to rely on me whether I get the job done or not. So I feel the pressure, definitely.
I think half the people out there feel sorry for me because of my father, because they know what we have to live up to. And I think the other half expect it. So I think right in the middle, I should do well because I grew up with it, and my dad, I have the best money can buy of everything, and that helps a lot.
Are there any type of hobbies that you do aside from racing? Is there anything that you're else involved in?
Don't have time for anything. Watch television when I get the opportunity to be home. I like to become a real couch lizard when I don't have to race.
If you had not gotten into racing, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
Oh, there's no doubt, thinking about it, if I would have put this much effort into something else, I could definitely afford to do whatever I wanted to.
What have you enjoyed the most about your life in racing?
The family involvement and the fact that drag racing is the one sport that spectators and the kids can come into the pits, and they can talk to you and you can talk to them, and all other types of automotive sports, they can't get in the pits and talk to the drivers and the crews and look at their race cars and stuff, and you can in drag racing.
Family involvement and interaction with the fans. There are not many professional sports that can boast that. And for the Brad Anderson family, they're one of the fortunate few. For Sports Profiles, I am J.R. Ibarra. Thank you for joining us.